Today, tellingly, is our last lecture cluster, and these lectures will focus on the last work of literature that we're going to look at for the course, and it's the play Joe Turner's Come and Gone by August Wilson. Um, and August Wilson, by any reckoning, is regarded as one of the great playwrights of the 20th century, American playwrights of the 20th century. He's that significant, that important, and that massive. I mean, when we think of, if we decided to look down the line at 20th century playwrights, there's some names that would constantly come up: Edward Albee, David Mamet, T.S. Eliot, who had a few plays that he did, Lillian Hellman, Eugene O'Neil, Tennessee Williams, and Arthur Miller. These are all playwrights whose work is constantly being anthologized and it's put in different places. One could talk about important plays, and that could vary. But in terms of body of work, some of these names come up, and of these, one would have to sort of single out Eugene O'Neil, the Tennessee Williams, and Arthur Miller as sort of the playwrights that are constantly giving a great deal of attention. You cannot name that list without, of course, August Wilson. August Wilson becomes part of the pantheon of great American playwrights, and he does so on the strength of a very, very specific body of work. August Wilson's body of work is now called the Pittsburgh Cycle or the 20th Century Cycle, and it's 10 plays that he wrote, and 10 plays that would become understood to be eventually, and he would declare it that way, an examination of the African American experience in the 20th century America. And what he did very fascinatingly is that he began writing these plays. The earliest play that he wrote on stage was a play called Jitney, um, and then Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and then the play started to come forward. And I think by the time he had completed the second of what would become this decalogue, Wilson decided that what he's going to do is to write a play for every decade of the 20th century. And this is what he ended up doing. So from 1910 until the 1990s, each of the plays is set during those periods, and he didn't write them in a chronological order in terms of the periods that they represented. He wrote these plays, but he was always aware of a play being associated with a particular century, a particular decade in the century. And interestingly, when he finished the last play, which was for the last play that would complete this cycle, within months of the completion of the play and the staging of the play, August Wilson contracts cancer, and he dies. And he dies having completed the cycle. It's a storied history. It is dramatic in its power and its force. And each of these plays has, he's one of the most decorated playwrights of the 20th century. He's won the Pulitzer Prize twice for his work. He's won the Obie Awards. He's won the Drama Critics Award. He's won every major playwright and every major award for a playwright that is possible in American letters. August Wilson has won for one or several of his plays, and it's unprecedented. And and in all his plays, August Wilson's casting was very clear. These were African Americans. He was telling the story of African Americans. All but one of his plays was set in Pittsburgh, in that city of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. All his plays were set in that place, except one. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is set in Chicago. His plays tell the story of working class people, tell the story of African Americans who have moved through class and into a position of in some plays to position of authority. They are all migrants from the South. This is the story of the Great Migration and how African Americans left the South and moved into the North and tried to find a life there, but were always being connected back to their past and to the South and the stories of the South. Even though the plays are set in the 20th century, they're plays that tell the story of slavery. They tell the story of the Jim Crow system. They tell the story of the life of people in those times. And yet, you'd say, are these plays about racial strife or racial struggle? The irony is that they are plays about people's lives, people's everyday lives, the things that they go through every day, the decisions that they make, the relationships that they have, the losses, the gains, the killings, the jailing, all of these rich complexity of experiences are told in these plays. It's a fantastic body of work. And what we began to see happening most recently, and this is a great and natural occurrence, is that there've been film adaptations of of many of the plays, and I as I understand it, Denzel Washington has secured the rights for the series and has committed to staging it. So at least two have been done. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, stunning play, stunning film that received a number of awards, and had a great impact. And then, of course, Fences, starring Denzel Washington, has also done very well. But there's still 8 others that I'm sure are going to be done at some point. There's a sense in which these plays have become a part of the understanding of what the 20th century is for America. Even though the characters are all African American, what Wilson was writing was the American 20th century. And he was writing the American 20th century on the basis of W.E.B. Du Bois's declaration that the most critical theme, the most important theme, the most defining force and factor in the 20th century, and this is W.B. Du Bois saying this in 1902, he says, will be the story and the experience of the African American, of the Negro, he said. And this has proven to be absolutely the case, because at every juncture of American life, the question of what is the positionality of the African American, the questions of freedom, the questions of Supreme Court decisions, the questions of questions around feminism, the questions of rights, and so on and so forth, which have become incredibly central to American life. The question of real estate, of economics, of health, have pivoted around this question of how does America deal with the fact that it has this incredibly ugly legacy of slavery, and that it has a new society that is emerging that is still tainted and affected by that legacy. And yet it is also the century of rock and roll music. It's the century of hip hop music. It's the century of a great athletic achievements by African Americans. It's a century of great migrations that have done that. It's a century of the NBA. It's a century of all these Olympic. We've been watching the Olympics and all these achievements by African Americans. It is a century that is transformative to the understanding of what actually America is about, and its collective sense of freedom, its collective sense of reckoning with its history. So, as we talk about the play, I want us to understand that I'm introducing you to a playwright of the magnitude and significance of what Shakespeare would have been to the Elizabethans and has continued to be to the British. August Wilson has laid down a kind of gauntlet of language, of imagination, and of story that is rich with incredible possibilities of understanding the American psyche and the American imagination. I'll say a little more in a second.